So, your company is invested in some shiny new HR technology, but it's just not delivering. Sound familiar? Well, a lot of the time, the problem isn't the software. It's the friction between that new tech and your company's culture. Let's dig into how you can actually align your tech with your team to get the value you paid for.
I want you to really think about this for a second. Is your company culture basically acting as a speed bump for your technology? I mean, if you're trying to be agile and innovative, but your culture is still stuck in that old school, slow approval, hierarchical mindset, you've got a serious conflict on your hands, and it's killing your performance.
And look, this is not some small, fluffy issue. Culture has gone from being a nice to have to being absolutely essential to your business strategy. Seriously, getting your culture right is now make or break for long-term success.
Okay, so first up, let's unpack exactly why culture has become such a big deal, especially now, in this crazy fast digital world. Why is this conversation so urgent?
Think about it like this. You can have the most brilliant strategy in the world. Maybe it's global expansion or surviving some big tech disruption. But if your people, your team, aren't culturally on board, if their daily habits and mindsets are actually fighting against that strategy, then the whole plan is just, well, it's going to fail. An outdated culture will always, always sink a brilliant strategy.
Now, this right here is the perfect metaphor for this whole thing. Your new HR systems, those fancy performance platforms and collaboration tools, that's your new software. But your company culture? That's the operating system. It's the base layer that dictates how everything else runs. And you just can't install advanced modern software on an old clunky OS. It's gonna lag, it's gonna glitch, and eventually, it's gonna crash.
And that brings us to a really key idea. Tech and culture aren't enemies. They're not fighting for control. When you do this right, they become a powerful team, where each one makes the other stronger. Let's see what that actually looks like. So, this is that partnership in action. You don't just sit around and hope for a new culture, you actively build it with your technology. For instance, if you want a culture of constant feedback, you roll out performance management platforms that make giving and getting feedback a normal, everyday thing. Want more collaboration? Then you use reward systems that automatically recognize team efforts, not just the solo superstars. See? The technology becomes the engine that drives the culture you want.
All right, so how do you actually do this? It can feel like a huge task, but there's a clear process you can follow. So let's walk through a super practical 6-step playbook for getting your culture and your technology in sync.
Here's the roadmap. It's 6 simple steps. First, you have to understand. Then, you define the why. After that, you embed the change. Next step is leadership. Then you empower your people. And finally, you measure and adapt. Let's break them down. First things first, you have to be brutally honest with yourself. You can't figure out how to get somewhere new if you don't even know where you're starting from. Understanding what your culture actually is, not what the mission statement says it is the foundation for everything else. And hey, this isn't about guesswork. You use data. Modern feedback platforms give you a real-time pulse on how employees are feeling. You can analyze data from your HR system, your HRIS, to spot patterns in who's getting promoted or who's leaving. Quick pulse surveys are great for a snapshot of morale. The whole point here is to find the real, measurable gaps between the culture you have and the one you need.
Okay, once you know where you stand, you absolutely have to define the why. Why are we doing this? People need a good reason to change habits they've had for years. Is it about being more competitive? Creating a better place to work? You've got to create a clear, compelling story that connects this change to something that actually matters to people.
Now we get to the fun part, upgrading that operating system. This is where you literally hardwire your new cultural values into your everyday systems. If transparency is the goal, you set up your systems to give people more access to information. This is how you turn abstract ideas into something your employees experience every single day. This one is huge. No culture change will ever work without leaders buying in, period. If your executives are talking about collaboration but are only rewarding individual rock stars, the whole thing is dead on arrival. They have to walk the talk, visibly living these new values in everything they do. And this is a 2-part job, really. Your senior leaders have to set the tone from the very top. At the same time, your HR pros need to be the culture champions on the ground, making sure these new values get woven into everything from the very first job interview to how you onboard new hires. You can't just force a new culture on people. They have to want to be a part of it. And that means you have to invest in them. Give them the training they need for the new tools. Use technology to build trust and open up communication. When your employees feel valued and prepared for the change, they become your biggest allies instead of your biggest roadblocks. And finally, this is not a one-and-done project. You have to treat culture change like a living, breathing thing. Use your HR data to track if engagement and satisfaction are going up. Are the changes actually working? If not, you tweak your strategy. It's a constant loop. Measure, learn, and adjust. So you've gone through all 6 steps. Great. But how do you make sure this new culture actually sticks around for the long haul? This last part is all about building a resilient organization where this change isn't just temporary. So what does true success look like? Well, sustainable culture change isn't a project with a finish line. It's a whole new way of operating. It's a deep commitment to this constant cycle of getting feedback, adapting, and getting better, over and over again. And the payoff for all this work is huge. When you get your culture and your technology working together, you're doing so much more than just fixing HR problems. You're building an entire organization that's more innovative, more resilient, and just way better prepared for whatever the future throws at it. So I'll leave you with this question to take back to your team. If you look at your organization right now, what's the single biggest cultural gap you need to close first? Answering that's your starting line.